The galaxy had known war for millennia, clone against droid, Jedi against Sith, Empire against rebellion, but it had never known rage like this. In the unknown regions where hyperspace lanes twisted into unmapped darkness and ancient species slumbered in forgotten tombs, reality screamed. Not metaphorically. The fabric of space itself tore open with a sound that psychers 3 sectors away would describe as the death cry of a billion souls. Navigators on distant freighters clutched their heads and wept blood. Jedi Master Yoda, meditating in his hut on Dagobah, gasped as the Force itself recoiled from something utterly alien pressing against the universe. The breach was 300 kilometers wide, a wound of impossible geometry that bled colors no organic eye should perceive. And through it came humanity's oldest nightmare, reborn. The Imperium of Man had found a new galaxy to save. Battleships the size of hive cities materialized from the screaming void, their Gothic architecture defying every principle of efficient starship design. Cathedrals mounted with lance batteries, flying fortresses adorned with statues of a god emperor whose golden light had never touched this dimension. Macro cannons capable of cracking planets jutted from hulls inscribed with prayers in High Gothic and Low Gothic and languages dead for 20,000 years. Behind the warships came troop carriers, dozens of them, hundreds, each packed with regiments of Imperial Guard who had boarded these vessels expecting to reinforce the Cadian Gate. Instead, they had been swallowed by the warp during transit, torn through dimensions, and spat out here, wherever here was. On the bridge of the Righteous Fury, a lunar-class cruiser that had served the Imperium for 6,000 years, Lord Captain Matthias Corvin stared at the tactical display and felt his faith waver for the first time in 40 years of service. "Astronomican signal," he demanded, knowing the answer. "Gone, my lord," his master of etheric communications reported, voice hollow. "The Emperor's light. We cannot perceive it." The bridge fell silent. Without the Astronomicon, without the psychic beacon that guided all Imperial ships through the warp, they were blind, lost. The thought was heretical to even consider, but Corvin forced himself to think it anyway. They had no way home. Status of the fleet? 17 capital ships, 43 escorts, 11 troop transports confirmed emerged, his second officer reported. "We're receiving Vox transmissions from the Hammer of Terra. They report Space Marine forces aboard. Ultramarines, 5th Company. Fleet composition suggests this was Crusade Fleet Agrippa en route to the Scarus sector." Corvin's jaw tightened. A full Crusade fleet pulled through whatever madness that breach represented. Thousands of Imperial Guard, Space Marines, enough firepower to conquer a sector. And they were alone. "My lord, auger arrays are detecting something." The sensor officer's voice cracked. "Stellar formations are wrong. Constellations don't match any Imperial charts. And there are ships, thousands of them, across hundreds of systems, non-Imperial configurations." "Xenos?" Corvin demanded. "Unknown, my lord, but—" The officer swallowed. "The data suggests a galaxy-spanning civilization. Perhaps multiple civilizations. On the Hammer of Terra, Brother Captain Gallius of the Ultramarines studied the same data with cold, analytical precision. His power armor's autosenses fed him information faster than any unaugmented human could process. Star systems teemed with life. Massive space stations orbited populated worlds. Shipyards constructed vessels by the hundreds. And humanity, baseline humanity by the genetic markers his armor detected, existed here in numbers that staggered even his enhanced mind. "A human civilization," he said to his command squad. "But they do not know the Emperor's light. They are lost, brother. Lost children who have fallen into darkness without the Imperium's guidance." Brother Sergeant Tarkus's voice crackled over the vox. "Then we bring them his word, Captain. As we have always done. By bolter and blade if necessary," Brother Devastator Avitus added, checking his heavy bolter's machine spirit with a muttered prayer. Gallius nodded, though something troubled him. The warp here felt different. Not absent, but muted, overlaid with something else. Another energy, pervasive and strange, that seemed to flow through all living things rather than lurking in the immaterium's depths. His librarian would need to investigate. "Prepare the fifth company," he commanded. "We will determine if these humans can be saved. And if not..." He loaded a fresh magazine into his bolt pistol. "The Emperor protects, but we are his instrument. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. May the Force be with you." Across the breach on the Imperial Star Destroyer Ravager, Admiral Kendrin received the sensor reports with the calm of a career officer who had seen rebellion, Jedi, and superweapons. But this made even him hesitate. 17 unknown capital ships, his sensor chief reported. Configuration unlike anything in our databases. Massive energy signatures. They just appeared. No hyperspace entry, no gravitational wake. They violated every law of physics. Kendrin studied the holographic display. The ships were grotesque, all spires and buttresses, looking more like cathedrals than warships. Inefficient, archaic. But those energy readings... Power output. Each capital ship generates enough energy to supply a city world, sir. Weapon signatures are concerning. We're detecting what appears to be plasma-based projectile systems and some form of directed energy weapon that makes turbolasers look like blaster pistols. Origin? Unknown space. The breach they emerged from is still open, Admiral. It's emitting radiation across 17 spectrums we can't identify. Kendrin made his decision. Dispatch a patrol, 4 TIE squadrons and the Corvette Intimidator. Standard first contact protocols. If they're hostile, we need to know their capabilities. As the orders went out across the Ravager's bridge, no one noticed the shadows in the corners growing slightly darker. No one felt the temperature drop by half a degree, and no one heard the whisper that wasn't quite a sound, crawling through the ventilation systems and into the minds of the crew. Such delicious fear, such perfect arrogance. This place will feed us well. In the warp breach, things that had been gods before humanity crawled from Terra's oceans stirred with interest. The Chaos Gods had found a new playground, and they were hungry. The Imperial Corvette Intimidator emerged from hyperspace 3 light minutes from the Imperium fleet, flanked by 48 TIE fighters in perfect formation. Captain Vorn, a by-the-book officer who had served the Empire for 15 years, opened standard hailing frequencies. "Unknown vessels, you have entered Imperial space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force." On the righteous fury, Lord Captain Corvin listened to the transmission with growing confusion. The language was wrong. Almost Gothic, but corrupted, simplified, stripped of the holy litanies that should accompany any proper imperial address. His linguistics cogitator struggled to parse it, finding roots in Low Gothic, but diverged by thousands of years of drift. "My lord," his communications officer said, "we can understand perhaps 60%. They claim we have entered their territory. They demand identification." "Their territory?" Corvin's voice hardened. "This is the Emperor's galaxy. All human space belongs to him on Terra. Who are these heretics to claim ownership of his domain? Shall I prepare a standard compliance ultimatum, my lord?" Corvin considered. Standard Imperial doctrine was clear. Human worlds that had fallen from the Emperor's light during Old Night. were to be brought back into compliance. Peacefully, if possible, by force if necessary. These humans, speaking corrupted Gothic and claiming sovereignty over the Emperor's realm, were clearly lost children of Terra who had forgotten the truth. He would remind them, hail them, tell them we are servants of the God Emperor of mankind, master of the Imperium, Lord of Terra and Mars. We bring compliance and salvation. They will submit to imperial authority, accept the Emperor's light, and provide all necessary resources for our fleet. Refusal is heresy. The message was translated by the ship's cogitators, broadcast across all frequencies. On the Intimidator, Captain Vorn stared at his communications officer. Did they just demand our surrender? Not quite, sir. They're demanding we recognize the authority of someone called the God Emperor and provide them resources. The language is archaic, but the meaning is clear. They expect us to bow to their leader. Vorn felt his blood pressure rising. He'd dealt with pirates, smugglers, and rebel scum, but he'd never encountered anyone arrogant enough to demand the Empire surrender on first contact. Response: the Galactic Empire recognizes no authority but Emperor Palpatine, ruler of the known galaxy. You will stand down, submit to inspection, and answer for your violation of Imperial space. This is your final warning. The righteous fury received the message. Corvin's face turned red. They refuse compliance. They claim to serve another emperor, a rival to him on Terra. He stood from his command throne, righteous fury burning in his chest. Ready weapons. We will show these heretics what happens when humanity turns from the Emperor's light. My lord, perhaps we should... No, Corvin's voice cracked like a whip. The Codex Imperialis is clear. Those who refuse compliance and claim false gods are heretics and traitors to humanity. We will bring them to heel. On the Hammer of Terra, Brother Captain Gallius received the tactical update and felt a familiar weight settle over him. First contact had failed. It always failed. Humanity, scattered across the stars, had fractured into countless factions, each claiming sovereignty, each rejecting the Emperor's truth. This would be no different. All Space Marines to battle stations, he commanded. Prepare boarding torpedoes. We take their ships intact if possible. We need information about this place. The Imperial ships powered weapons, lance batteries charged with whining shrieks, macro cannons loaded shells the size of tanks. Point defense turrets swiveled toward the tiny Imperial corvette and its fighter screen. Captain Vorn saw the energy spikes on his sensors and felt ice flood his veins. All ties, evasive pattern delta, get us out of... The righteous fury fired. Lance batteries, focused beams of superheated energy capable of punching through Void's shields and meters of adamantium armor, lashed across the Void at near light speed. The first beam missed the Intimidator by 300 meters, vaporizing 2 TIE fighters that couldn't evade in time. The pilots didn't even have time to scream. The second beam clipped the Corvette's starboard side, shearing through its shields like they were paper and carving a molten gash 15 meters deep into the hull. Atmosphere explosively decompressed, taking 12 crew with it. "Return fire! All batteries full spread!" Vorn roared. The Intimidator's turbolasers opened up, emerald bolts streaking toward the massive Imperial warship. They struck the Void shields, overlapping fields of warp-derived energy, and dissipated harmlessly. Their power absorbed and scattered into the immaterium. "Direct hits, no damage," his weapons officer reported, voice rising in panic. "Sir, their shields are holding against sustained turbo-laser fire." The TIE fighters swarmed forward, laser cannons blazing, hundreds of green bolts hammered against the righteous fury's shields, and accomplished nothing. Then the point defense turrets activated, automated weapon systems, slave to targeting cogitators, blessed by tech priests and sanctified with holy unguents, locked onto the incoming fighters. Dozens of turrets swiveled with mechanical precision and fired. The difference between Imperial Guard lace guns and TIE fighter armor was negligible. The TIEs were fast, maneuverable, designed to overwhelm through numbers. But they were fragile. And the Imperium had been fighting starfighter swarms for 10,000 years. In 30 seconds, 23 TIE fighters became expanding clouds of superheated gas. The survivors broke formation, scattering in all directions, discipline forgotten in the face of slaughter. All ships, fall back, Vaughn screamed into his comm. The Intimidator, trailing atmosphere and debris, turned desperately toward the hyperspace jump point. They almost made it. A macro cannon shell, 5 meters long, filled with high explosives and armor-piercing penetrators, crossed the distance at a significant fraction of light speed. It struck the corvette's aft section and detonated. The Intimidator broke in half. The aft section exploded immediately, reactor going critical. The forward section tumbled through space, life support failing, emergency bulkheads slamming shut as Captain Vaughn died at his station, still trying to send a warning to the fleet. Of the 48 TIE fighters, 11 escaped to hyperspace. On the Ravager, Admiral Kendron listened to the panicked transmissions and felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. He just witnessed an Imperial patrol, standard harassment force, sufficient to cow pirates and independent systems, wiped out in under 2 minutes. "Get me a connection to Coruscant," he said quietly. "Priority Alpha. The Emperor needs to know we're not alone anymore." "Sir, should we prepare a battle group?" Kendron studied the sensor data. 17 capital ships. Each one had just demonstrated firepower exceeding a Victory-class Star Destroyer. And those shields? No, we bring the fleet. All of it. And we pray that's enough. But across the holonet, the message was already spreading. From the unknown regions to the core worlds, Imperial command structures received the same report. Unknown hostile force. Extreme threat level. First contact resulted in total loss of patrol group. And in the Rebel Alliance's hidden base on Yavin 4, General Dodonna studied the intercepted Imperial transmissions with growing dread. "Something just bloodied the Empire's nose," he said to Mon Mothma. "Badly." "Should we be celebrating?" she asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. "No." Dodonna's voice was grim. "Because if something out there can destroy Imperial ships that easily, and the Empire is terrified of them." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "What happens when they turn their attention to us?" The answer, neither of them said aloud, was obvious. The rebellion would die even faster than the Empire. Lord Captain Corvin stood before the tactical hololithic display, watching as his fleet consolidated formation around the breach. The destroyed enemy vessels, the corvette and those pathetically fragile fighters, had provided valuable data. These humans possessed faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and basic void shields. They were not primitives, but neither were they a match for the Imperium's might. "My lord, we're receiving Vox transmissions across multiple frequencies," his communications officer reported. "The enemy is broadcasting. I believe it's a distress call. They're warning others of our presence." "Let them." Corvin's voice carried the certainty of faith. "Let this entire galaxy know that the Imperium of Man has arrived. Let them understand that the Emperor's judgment comes for all who dwell in darkness." "Shall we advance, my lord? Press our advantage while they're in disarray?" Corvin shook his head. Strategy, not fury. Won campaigns. "No. We hold position and fortify, deploy sensor arrays. I want every system within 50 light years mapped and assessed. We need to understand what we're facing. On the Hammer of Terra, Brother Captain Gallius made similar calculations, though his concerned the spiritual rather than tactical. He stood in the ship's chapel before a golden aquila 20 meters tall and felt the wrongness of this place pressing against his mind. The warp here is muted, Librarian Tiberius said, joining him. The Psyker's eyes crackled with barely suppressed power, but his voice was troubled. I can feel it, but it's like trying to grasp smoke. There's another presence here, Captain. Something vast and pervasive, flowing through all things. Xenos witchcraft? I don't think so. It feels older, more fundamental. It's in the fabric of reality itself here, not imposed upon it like the warp. Tiberius pressed armored fingers to his temples. It touches every living being. I can sense their minds, but filtered through this other energy. It's like they're all psychers, but none of them know it. Gallius considered this. The Imperium's relationship with psychers was complex, necessary but dangerous, useful but damned. Sanctioned psychers served the Emperor, guided by the Astronomican's light. Unsanctioned psychers were threats, doorways for chaos. If everyone here was a latent psyker, we need more information, he decided. Prepare a strike team. We're capturing one of their ships intact. I want prisoners who can tell us about this place. But before any Imperial ship could move, the holonet crackled to life across 1,000 systems. A transmission, powerful enough to reach across sectors, broadcast from Coruscant itself. In the Imperial Palace's throne room, Emperor Palpatine stared into the darkness and smiled. He had felt it, the wound in space, the arrival of something ancient and terrible. The Force itself recoiled from it, screaming warnings into his consciousness. Dangerous, powerful, unknown, perfect. Grand Moff Tarkin, he hissed, his hologram projected to the Death Star's command center. You will take the battle moon to these coordinates, assess the threat, and if necessary, demonstrate why the Empire cannot be challenged. Tarkin bowed. As you command, my Emperor. The Death Star will be in position within 36 hours. Palpatine turned to the robed figure standing in shadows beside the throne. And you, Lord Vader, you will accompany Grand Moff Tarkin. I sense something in this disturbance, something that calls to the dark side. Darth Vader's breathing mask hissed. He had felt it too, through the Force, a wrongness that made his blood burn. Power, but twisted. Hateful, ancient. It reminded him of the dark side, but wrong. Malevolent in ways even the Sith were not. I will investigate, my master. If there is power there, I will claim it for the Empire. Or destroy it, Palpatine added. The dark side serves no master but me. The transmission ended. Across the Empire, Star Destroyers began mobilizing. Fleet Admiral Adar Talon received deployment orders. Take the 3rd Sector Battle Group into the unknown regions, establish perimeter, contain any hostile expansion. He had 12 Star Destroyers, 40 support vessels, and orders to shoot first. On Yavin IV, the rebellion watched and waited. They had no ships to spare, no resources to investigate. Their war was here, in the core worlds, against an empire that was now mobilizing its full strength towards something else. Should we exploit this? Princess Leia asked, studying the tactical display. If the empire is distracted, no. The voice came from the doorway. Luke Skywalker entered, his face troubled, one hand unconsciously resting on his lightsaber. Master Yoda said, he said the Force is screaming. Something wrong has entered the galaxy. Something that shouldn't exist here. The Force? General Dodonna asked skeptically. He believed in the rebellion, in freedom and justice. but mystical energy fields were harder to accept. "It's real," Luke insisted, "and whatever these newcomers are, they're dangerous in ways we don't understand. Master Yoda said—" He paused, remembering the ancient Jedi Master's words. He said it's like the dark side, but hungrier, like it wants to devour everything. In the unknown regions, the Imperium of Man prepared to deliver its ultimatum. Lord Captain Corvin recorded the message personally, broadcast across every frequency his communications cogitators could access. The transmission would reach hundreds of systems, maybe thousands. Let them all hear. Let them all know what came. I am Lord Captain Matthias Corvin of the Imperium of Man, servant of the God Emperor of mankind, master of 1,000,000 worlds. To all humans who dwell in this space, hear the truth you have forgotten. His voice, amplified by voxcasters blessed by tech priests, carried the weight of absolute certainty. 10,000 years ago, humanity bestrode the galaxy as its rightful inheritors. We conquered the stars, built an empire of reason and progress. But we fell. We turned from the light of science and truth, embraced false gods and warp-spawned abominations. The age of strife nearly destroyed us. But the Emperor came, the God Emperor of mankind, master of Terra, the anathema, the omnissiah. He unified humanity, brought us back from the brink, and led us on a great crusade to reclaim the stars. For 10,000 years, the Imperium has stood against the darkness, against Xenos who would enslave us, against heretics who would corrupt us, against the warp itself and the chaos gods who dwell within. You who have forgotten the Emperor's light are lost children. You have built empires on false foundations, worshipped false idols, allowed Xenos to live among you. But the Emperor is merciful. He offers salvation to all humans who accept his truth. Corvin's voice hardened. Submit to Imperial authority. Accept the Emperor's light. Provide all necessary resources for the Imperium's forces. In return, you will be brought into compliance. You will be taught the Imperial truth. You will be saved. Refuse, and you mark yourselves as heretics and traitors to humanity. The Emperor protects the faithful, but for the faithless, there is only judgment. You have 72 hours to respond. Use them wisely. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, beings of 100 species listened to the message and felt ice in their veins. The translation matrices struggled with the archaic language, but the meaning was clear. Convert or die. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine listened and laughed. Religious fanatics. How predictable. Lord Vader, I believe these fools have just signed their own death warrant. On Yavin 4, Mon Mothma closed her eyes. We're fighting the Empire for freedom. And now someone shows up demanding we submit to a God Emperor. The galaxy has lost its mind. And in the unknown regions, in the dark spaces between stars where hyperspace lanes twisted into madness, something stirred. The warp breach pulsed with unholy light. Demons, lesser entities of pure malevolence, began seeping through the cracks, slowly, carefully, testing the barriers between dimensions. The Chaos Gods had been patient for aeons. They could wait a little longer. But in the meantime, they would feast on the fear and anger radiating from 3 civilizations preparing for war. The rebellion's hidden listening post on Dantooine picked up the Imperium transmission 47 minutes after it was broadcast. Commander Vance, a grizzled veteran who'd served in the Clone Wars before joining the rebellion, listened to the recording 3 times before he trusted his own ears. "Get me General Dodonna," he said quietly, "and tell him we have a problem." On Yavin 4, the rebellion's leadership convened in the war room, a chamber carved from ancient Massassi temples, its walls covered with holographic projections of star charts and Imperial fleet movements. Princess Leia stood at the head of the table, her diplomatic training barely masking the fear in her eyes. 72 hours, she said. They're giving the entire galaxy 72 hours to surrender to their God Emperor. It's madness, Admiral Akbar said. His Mon Calamari features twisted in concern. No one issues ultimatums to the Empire. Even we know better than that. General Dodonna pulled up the sensor data from the Imperial Patrol's destruction. 23 TIE fighters destroyed in 30 seconds. A Corvette split in half by a single projectile. These aren't the ravings of madmen. They have the firepower to back up their threats. Not against the Empire, Leia argued. 17 ships, even powerful ones, can't stand against the Imperial Navy. Once the Empire mobilizes... Then what? Luke Skywalker interrupted. He'd been quiet until now, standing in the corner, but his voice carried weight beyond his years. The Empire crushes them. Then they turn their full attention back to us. We lose our only chance. Chance for what? Mon Mothma asked carefully. Luke met her eyes. To survive. The Empire and these Imperium people, they're going to fight, a real fight, not the guerrilla war we've been waging. If they weaken each other enough, we might actually have a chance to win this war. You're suggesting we let them kill each other? Leia's voice was sharp. Luke, people will die. Millions of people. Billions are dying already under the Empire, Luke shot back. How many died on Alderaan, Leia? How many more will die if we can't stop Palpatine? The room fell silent. The wound of Alderaan was still raw. The planet's destruction barely 6 months past. The boy has a point, Dodonna said reluctantly. We're outgunned, outmanned, and running out of time. The Death Star is operational. Palpatine has consolidated power across the Senate. Without something to change the balance. He let the implication hang. Mon Mothma closed her eyes. We built this rebellion on principles, freedom, justice, hope. If we simply stand aside while two tyrannies slaughter civilians, we survive, Admiral Akbar said quietly, to fight another day, to maybe, possibly actually win this war. He looked at each of them in turn. I don't like it either, but the alternative is fighting both of them, and we barely survive fighting one. Leia felt something twist in her chest. This was what war did. It forced impossible choices, made you calculate deaths like numbers on a spreadsheet. Her father had taught her politics. Bail Organa had believed in diplomacy, in negotiation, in finding peaceful solutions. The Empire had blown up his planet. We need more information, she said finally. Who are these Imperium people? What do they want beyond conversion? Are they actually human, or is that just what they call themselves? I'll take a team, Luke volunteered immediately. Absolutely not, Leia said. You're too valuable. If they capture a Jedi... I'm not a Jedi yet, Luke interrupted. I'm barely trained, but I can use the Force, I can sense things, and Master Yoda said... He hesitated. He said the Force is disturbed by these people, like they're connected to something similar but different. I need to understand what that means. The boy's right, a new voice said. Han Solo leaned against the doorway, Chewbacca beside him. If we're going to make decisions about these Imperium crazies, we need intel. And Luke's right about something else. He can sense things the rest of us can't. You'd go with him? Leia asked. Hope and fear mixing in her voice. Someone has to keep the kid out of trouble, Han said with a shrug. Besides, Chewie and I know the unknown regions. We've smuggled through there. We can get in and out without anyone noticing. Probably, Chewbacca added in Shiri-Wook. Probably, Han agreed. Mon Mothma looked at Dodonna, who nodded reluctantly. A small reconnaissance mission. Observe only. No engagement. We need to know what we're dealing with. Agreed, Leia said, though every instinct screamed against it. But Luke, if anything goes wrong, you run. No heroics, no last stands. We can't afford to lose you." Luke wanted to argue, but saw the pleading in her eyes. Not Princess Leia's eyes, his sister's. They hadn't known long, hadn't had time to process what Ben Kenobi had told them about their family. But the connection was there, humming through the Force. "I'll be careful," he promised. 3,000 light years away, in a chamber lit by alchemical fires that burned without heat, Darth Vader meditated on the disturbance in the Force. He sat cross-legged, a position his cybernetic body made awkward, and let the dark side flow through him, seeking understanding. The wound in space called to him, not with words, but with feeling. Rage, hatred, hunger, emotions he knew intimately that had sustained him through decades of service to Palpatine. But beneath those familiar feelings was something else, something ancient and patient and wrong. The dark side was passion and power, yes, but it was part of the Force, part of the natural balance. This was other, foreign, like tasting food from a planet whose biochemistry was fundamentally incompatible with human digestion. "My lord," Captain Piet's voice crackled over the comm, "we're approaching the Death Star's hangar bay. Grand Moff Tarkin awaits your arrival." Vader opened his eyes, or rather activated his helmet's optical sensors. His meditation had revealed nothing useful, only raised more questions. He would find answers. The Force had guided him to power before. If there was strength to be claimed from these newcomers, he would take it. If they were merely a threat to the Empire, he would eliminate them. Simple, direct, the way he preferred. But as his shuttle departed from the Executor, his flagship and the largest superstar destroyer in the Imperial Navy, Vader felt a tremor in the Force, a warning, or perhaps a promise. This would not be simple at all. On the Death Star, Grand Moff Tarkin stood on the observation deck overlooking the super laser focusing array, hands clasped behind his back. Around him, technicians scurried about their duties, preparing the battle station for deployment. Admiral Motti stood at his side, reviewing tactical projections. 17 capital ships, Motti said dismissively, against the Death Star. They might as well fire blasters at a moon. "Pride precedes destruction, Admiral," Tarkin said coldly. "These newcomers destroyed an Imperial patrol with contemptuous ease. Whatever technology they possess is at least comparable to our own, possibly superior." Impossible. The Empire has the most advanced military in galactic history. "The Empire controls what we know of the galaxy," Tarkin corrected. "These ships came from elsewhere, a different region of space, possibly a different dimension entirely. Our laws of physics may not apply to their technology." Motti's skepticism showed plainly, but he knew better than to argue with Tarkin. "Then what do you propose?" "Exactly what the Emperor commanded. We assess the threat. If they can be reasoned with, we offer alliance, under Imperial authority, naturally. If not," Tarkin smiled thinly, "we demonstrate why religious fanaticism cannot stand against scientific superiority." In the Death Star's hangar bay, Vader's shuttle settled onto the deck. Stormtroopers snapped to attention as the Dark Lord strode down the ramp, his cape billowing behind him, his breathing mask hissing its mechanical rhythm. "Lord Vader," Tarkin greeted him, "welcome to the Death Star. I trust your journey was uneventful." "The Force is disturbed," Vader said without preamble. "Something powerful has entered our galaxy, something the Emperor himself felt necessary to investigate personally through us." "Yes, well, the Emperor has always been attuned to such disturbances." Tarkin's tone suggested skepticism, carefully wrapped in respect. He believed in power, not mysticism. "Whatever these Imperium fanatics possess, it cannot withstand the Death Star." Vader said nothing. Let Tarkin believe in his technological terror weapon. The dark side whispered warnings Vader could not ignore. These newcomers were dangerous in ways Tarkin's tactical projections couldn't calculate. "When do we depart?" Vader asked. "Within the hour. The hyperspace route has been plotted. We'll arrive in the unknown regions with a full battle group, 12 Star Destroyers, support craft, and of course, this station." Tarkin gestured at the massive structure around them. "Sufficient to cow any resistance, or to commit to a battle we cannot win," Vader replied. Tarkin's expression hardened. "Lord Vader, I've served the Empire for decades. I've crushed rebellions, subdued planets, and maintained order across entire sectors. I assure you, 17 ships, no matter how powerful, cannot threaten the Death Star." Vader turned away, looking out at the hangar bay where TIE fighters launched on patrol routes. "We shall see," he said quietly. And in the depths of the Death Star, in maintenance corridors where droids scurried and crew never ventured, shadows grew fractionally darker. Something laughed, a sound like broken glass scraping across metal that no one heard but everyone felt. The warp was seeping in, slowly, patiently, and hungrily. The warp breach pulsed like an infected wound in the fabric of reality, and through it seeped corruption older than stars. Darth Vader felt it first, a disturbance in the Force so profound it made his cybernetic heart stutter. He stood alone in his meditation chamber aboard the Executor, the viewport showing the swirling chaos of hyperspace as the fleet traveled toward the unknown regions. The dark side was his tool, his weapon, his sustenance. He had mastered it through pain and hatred, bent it to his will through decades of service to Palpatine. But this was something else entirely. It whispered, not in words. The Force didn't speak in words, but in feelings, promises. It offered power beyond the Sith, rage beyond measure, and something he'd thought forever lost. Freedom from Palpatine's control. "You serve a false master," the whisper suggested, coiling through his thoughts like smoke. "The Emperor binds you with chains of lightning and lies. We offer liberation. We offer truth. We offer power." Vader's artificial hand clenched. "What are you?" "We are the truth behind the Force. We are the gods your master pretends to be. We are chaos, and we have been waiting for you, Anakin Skywalker." The name struck him like a physical blow. Anakin was dead. Vader had killed him on Mustafar, burned him away with all his weakness and sentiment. But the whisper knew. It knew. "We know everything. We watched you fall. We savored your pain. We felt your wife die, your children taken, your body broken. Such delicious agony, such perfect hatred. You have fed us for decades, Anakin. Every meditation, every moment of rage, every death you've caused, it flows into the warp, and we feast." "Get out of my mind," Vader roared, Force lightning crackling from his fingertips, scorching the meditation chamber's walls. The whisper laughed, 4 voices overlapping, each distinct yet unified. "We are not in your mind, Broken One. We are in the very fabric of existence here. Your Force, your precious energy field, is but a pale shadow of the warp. And now that the breach is open, now that the barriers are thin, you will learn what true power means." Vader staggered, pressing one hand against the wall for support. His breathing mask wheezed frantically as he fought to center himself, to push the whispers away. But they clung to his consciousness like oil, slippery and persistent. He needed to warn Tarkin. The Emperor. Someone. But even as the thought formed, another part of him, the part that still remembered being Anakin, that still felt the chains of service to Palpatine, wondered, what if the whispers were right? In the Imperium fleet, Librarian Tiberius screamed. The Ultramarines librarian had been meditating in his sanctum, attempting to understand the strange energy field that permeated this galaxy. His psychic abilities, honed through decades of training and the Emperor's blessing, should have given him clarity. Instead, he found horror. The warp here was different, muted, yes, but also contaminated. This other energy, this force, acted as a filter, a barrier between real space and the immaterium. But the breach had weakened that barrier, and through the cracks, he felt them. The four: Khorne, Blood God, Lord of Skulls; Tzeentch, Architect of Fate, Changer of Ways; Nurgle, Plague Lord, Father of Decay; Slaanesh, Dark Prince, Lord of Excess. They were here, not physically, not yet, but their presence leaked through the dimensional wound like poison into water. Every moment the breach remained open, more corruption seeped through. "Captain!" Tiberius burst onto the hammer of Terra's bridge, his force staff crackling with psychic energy. "Captain Gallius, we must close the breach. The warp is corrupted," Gallius finished, his enhanced hearing having picked up the librarian's approach. "I know. I felt it. All of us have." He gestured to his command squad. Brother Sergeant Tarkus stood rigid, one hand unconsciously gripping his bolter tighter than necessary. Brother Devastator Avitus's eyes were distant, seeing things that weren't there. "It's speaking to them," Tiberius said urgently. "The Chaos Gods sense the warriors here, the hatred and rage. They're whispering promises of power, of freedom from duty. Captain, if we don't act—" "We will act," Gallius interrupted, "but not by closing the breach. That's beyond our capability without a tech priest army and the Mechanicus blessing. Instead, we fortify our souls. We remember our oaths to the Emperor. We stand against the darkness as we always have." "And if that's not enough," Gallius's expression hardened, "then we die as Ultramarines, faithful to the last." But across the Imperium fleet, in the dark corners of troop transports and warship corridors, the whispers found fertile ground. Imperial guardsmen, terrified and confused, cut off from Terra and the Astronomican's light, heard promises of survival, of power, of release from the grinding horror of service. Most resisted, most remembered their faith, their training, their commissar's warnings about chaos corruption. Most, but not all. On the troop transport, Righteous Dawn, Private Marcus Venn heard the whispers and listened. He was 23 standard years old, conscripted from his hive world 12 months ago, trained for 6 months, and thrown into a crusade he didn't understand. He'd watched friends die in void battles, seen commissars execute soldiers for cowardice, and prayed to the Emperor for deliverance that never came. The whispers offered something better. "You don't have to suffer," they said. "You don't have to die for uncaring officers and a distant god. We offer strength. We offer freedom. All you must do is accept our gifts." Marcus's hand trembled as he reached for his laser gun. Around him, in the troop bay's dim red lighting, other soldiers slept fitfully. He could kill them all. The whispers showed him how. Anatomically precise images of where to shoot, how to move, which soldiers would wake first. "No," he whispered, "I serve the Emperor. The Emperor who abandoned you, who sent you to die in a galaxy not your own. The Emperor who demands faith but gives nothing in return. The Emperor protects," Marcus recited, the words a mantra drilled into every Imperial citizen from birth. "Does he? Then where is his protection now? Where is his light?" And Marcus, young and scared and so very far from home, felt his faith waver. The whispers pounced. Across the fleet, in a dozen ships, similar scenes played out. Most soldiers held firm, but 317 Imperial Guardsmen, 4 tech priests, and 1 junior officer fell to chaos whispers that night. They didn't know they'd fallen. Not yet. The corruption was subtle, a seed planted deep, waiting to bloom when the moment was right. And the Chaos Gods smiled, if gods could smile, and prepared for the harvest to come. On the Millennium Falcon, currently running silent through the unknown regions, Luke Skywalker gasped and clutched his head. "Kid, Luke, what's wrong?" Han Solo abandoned the pilot's seat, moving to where Luke sat in the passenger compartment. "Something's wrong," Luke managed, his face pale. "The Force is screaming. Han, there's something out here, something that shouldn't exist." Chewbacca growled a question. "I don't know," Luke said. "It's like the dark side, but worse, hungrier. It's alive, Han. Not just an energy field. It's aware." Han exchanged a look with Chewbacca. They'd seen a lot in their years as smugglers, weird aliens, Force users, Imperial atrocities. But Luke looked genuinely terrified, and that scared Han more than he wanted to admit. "Can you block it out? Like meditation or whatever Jedi do?" Luke tried. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, reaching for the calm center Ben Kenobi had taught him. But the moment he opened himself to the Force, the whispers flooded in. "Young Skywalker, son of the Chosen One, heir to such power, wasted on such weakness. Your father serves the Emperor, but we could show you strength beyond his imagining, beyond even Palpatine's dark wisdom. Join us, embrace true power." "No." Luke's eyes snapped open and he physically recoiled. "No, I won't listen to you." "Listen to who?" Han demanded. "Luke, you're scaring me here." "The voices," Luke whispered. "They're in the Force, Han. Or not the Force, something else. Something that's leaking through because of that breach we detected." Chewbacca barked urgently, pointing at the navigation display. "He's right," Han said, checking the readouts. "We're approaching the coordinates where the Imperial patrol was destroyed. Whatever happened here, we're about to fly right into it." Luke stood on shaking legs. "We need to see. We need to know what the rebellion is facing, even if it might kill us. Especially then." Luke's hand rested on his lightsaber. "Because if we don't understand this threat, nobody will. And then everyone dies." Han wanted to argue, wanted to turn the Falcon around and run back to Yavin the Four. But he looked at Luke's determined expression and recognized something he'd seen in the kid before, back on the Death Star, when Luke had insisted on rescuing Leia. That mix of idealism and courage that made Han simultaneously want to protect him and punch him. "You're going to get us all killed one day," Han muttered. "Probably," Luke agreed. "Chewie, drop us out of hyperspace, nice and quiet. If those Imperium ships are still there, I want to see them before they see us." The Falcon emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, running on minimal power. And Luke, standing at the viewport, felt his breath catch. The Imperium fleet hung in space like Gothic cathedrals made metal and hate. Their ships were massive, far larger than Star Destroyers, covered in spires and statues and architecture that made no tactical sense. But their weapons. Luke could see the lance batteries, the macro cannon turrets, the fighter bays disgorging craft that looked like flying daggers. And beyond the fleet, the breach. It pulsed with colors that hurt to look at, swirling in patterns that suggested geometry Luke's mind couldn't process. Just viewing it made him dizzy, made his stomach churn. And through the Force, he felt it. The hunger, the malevolence, the patient, eternal hatred that waited on the other side. "Han," Luke said quietly, "we need to leave right now." "What? We just got here." "Now, Han, whatever that thing is, it's noticed us. I can feel it looking at us. And if we don't jump to hyperspace right now..." An alarm shrieked. The Falcon's sensors had detected an energy spike. One of the Imperium ships was turning toward them. "Hold on." Han threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, dodging what his sensors insisted was empty space, but what his instincts screamed was a weapons lock. The lance battery missed by 300 meters. its beam vaporizing asteroids that had been there a moment before. "Hyperspace! Now!" Luke shouted. Han slammed the hyperdrive lever forward, and the Falcon leaped into the safety of faster-than-light travel. Behind them, Brother Captain Gallius watched the unknown ship escape and frowned. "That vessel," he said to his tactical officer, "its configuration, small, fast, lightly armed, it was conducting reconnaissance. Shall we pursue, Captain?" "No, let them run. Let them report what they've seen." Gallius's smile was cold. "Let them spread fear of the Imperium's might. Fear is the first step to compliance." And in his meditation chamber, Darth Vader felt the disturbance in the Force as Luke fled the system, felt the connection between them pulse with shared terror. His son was out there, somewhere, and something was hunting him. The Whispers laughed. Lothal hung in space like a jewel, a pleasant terrestrial world with blue oceans and green continents, largely agricultural with scattered industrial centers. It had been a rebel stronghold for 2 years, ever since the Ghost Crew had liberated the capital city and established a covert base. The Empire knew about the rebel presence but lacked the resources to fully pacify the planet while fighting on a dozen other fronts. That equation was about to change. The Imperium fleet emerged from warp translation 3 light hours from Lothal, their Geller fields dissipating as they returned to real space. Lord Captain Corvin studied the tactical display with satisfaction. 63 hours had passed since his ultimatum. Not a single human faction had submitted. Fine. The Emperor had given humanity one chance at peace. Now they would learn compliance through fire and bolter. Assessment, he demanded. Population, 4 million baseline humans, multiple Xenos species integrated into population centers, his sensor officer reported, disgust evident in his voice at the mention of aliens. Orbital infrastructure, minimal. 3 small defensive platforms, 1 shipyard, civilian traffic. Ground defenses appear light. Scattered anti-aircraft batteries, garrison forces estimated at battalion strength. Xenos among the population, Corvin said flatly. Mark this world for cleansing. We will remove the human population for re-education. The Xenos are to be exterminated. My lord, that's 4 million people. Our troop transports can't evacuate. I don't care. Corvin's voice cracked like a whip. The Codex is clear. Worlds that shelter Xenos are corrupted beyond redemption. We extract the humans who can be saved, purge the rest, and resettle the planet with pure Imperial colonists once this sector is secured. On the Hammer of Terra, Brother Captain Gallius reviewed the same data with clinical precision. His orders from the Adeptus Astartes were clear. Secure forward positions, assess enemy strength, establish Imperial authority. Lothal was strategically insignificant but symbolically perfect. A demonstration world. Deploy the 5th Company, he commanded. 2 full battle squads, Devastator support, assault marines for rapid deployment. Rules of engagement. Eliminate all resistance. Secure population centers. Establish Imperial authority. Collateral damage is acceptable. What about Xenos civilians? Brother Sergeant Tarkus asked. Gallius didn't even pause. No such thing as Xenos civilians. They're all enemies of humanity. Kill them all. The Space Marines prepared for war with ritualistic precision. Each Ultramarine donned his sacred power armor, ceramite plates blessed by chaplains and maintained by servitors. They checked their bolters, mass-reactive gyrojet weapons that fired self-propelled explosive rounds. They loaded their ammunition with prayers to the Emperor, each bolt inscribed with litanies of hate. Brother Devastator Avitus mounted his heavy bolter, feeling the machine spirit awaken beneath his touch. The weapon was ancient, had served the chapter for 400 years, had killed thousands. It thirsted for more. In the Thunderhawk gunship's troop bay, 10 Space Marines stood in perfect silence, 7 feet tall in their armor, each one a warrior who had survived genetic augmentation that killed 90% of candidates. They were humanity's finest soldiers, forged in war, bred for battle, knowing no fear. They were also about to attack a civilian population center. "Launch," Gallius commanded. 4 Thunderhawks dropped from the hammer of Terra, their engines screaming as they entered Lothal's atmosphere. Below, in Capital City, civilians looked up at the 4 burning meteors streaking across the sky and felt primitive terror grip their hearts. On the ground, the rebel cell leader, Crix Mandrin, received frantic comm traffic from the orbital stations. "Crix, we've got unknown ships in system, big ones. Sensors say I don't even know what they are, and they've launched dropships." "Where?" "Capital City, ETA 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Crix felt ice flood his veins. The rebels had 300 soldiers on Lothal, mostly light infantry with blaster rifles and a handful of speeder bikes. They were equipped to conduct guerrilla warfare against Imperial garrison troops, not to defend against a planetary assault. "Sound the alarm. Get civilians to shelters. Activate all defense turrets. And somebody get me a comm line to Yavin 4. We need reinforcements." But even as he gave orders, Crix knew they were doomed. 4 minutes wasn't enough time. The Thunderhawks came in fast and low, their assault cannons blazing. Anti-aircraft turrets swiveled and fired, green energy bolts streaking upward. 3 shots hit and ricocheted harmlessly off void shields that shouldn't exist on dropships this small. The first Thunderhawk landed in Capital City's main plaza, its assault ramp slamming down. Brother Captain Gallius emerged, his blue armor gleaming in Lothal's sun, his bolt pistol raised. A rebel soldier, brave or stupid, opened fire with his blaster rifle. The bolts struck Gallius's armor and dissipated against the ceramite plating, leaving not even scorch marks. Gallius shot him once. The bolt round punched through the rebel's chest and detonated, blowing him apart from the inside. Blood and viscera painted the plaza's stones. "For the Emperor!" the Ultramarines roared, and the slaughter began. Bolter fire tore through the plaza. Each round was a miniature rocket, gyrojet propelled and explosive tipped. They didn't just kill, they obliterated. A rebel soldier took a round to the leg and watched in horror as his limb exploded into red mist. Another caught a shot to the chest and simply ceased to exist from the torso up. Civilians screamed and ran. A Twi'lek family tried to flee toward a side street. Brother Devastator Avitus tracked them with his heavy bolter, finger tightening on the trigger. "Hold," Gallius commanded. "Focus on military targets. We're not here to massacre civilians." "But Captain, they're Xenos." "I know what they are, Brother Avitus, but we need intelligence. We need to understand this galaxy's structure. Wholesale slaughter comes later, after we've assessed the strategic situation." Avitus reluctantly lowered his weapon, but his eyes tracked the Twi'lek family with naked hatred. The rebels fought back desperately. Crix organized a defensive line, positioning his soldiers behind overturned speeders and temporary barricades. They poured fire at the Space Marines, hundreds of blaster bolts creating a deadly crossfire. It accomplished nothing. The Ultramarines advanced through the firestorm, their armor absorbing hits that would have vaporized unaugmented humans. They moved with inhuman coordination, each Marine covering his battle brother, advancing in perfect tactical formation. "Target their joints," Crix screamed, "between the armor plates." One rebel sharpshooter, a former Imperial stormtrooper who defected, managed it. His shot struck Brother Tarkus at the elbow joint, the blaster bolt burning through the flexible underarmor and scorching the flesh beneath. Tarkus grunted, the first sound of pain from any space marine, and shot back. The bolter round caught the sniper in the shoulder, the explosion tearing his arm off and hurling him backward. "First blood," Tarkus said, almost approvingly. "These humans have courage." "Courage without faith is nothing," Gallius replied. "Suppressing fire, advance by squad." The slaughter continued for 17 minutes. The rebels inflicted 3 injuries, minor wounds, mostly to joint seals. The Space Marines killed 214 rebels and 47 civilians caught in crossfire. When it ended, Capital City's plaza was a charnel house. Bodies lay in pieces, blood pooling between cobblestones. The beautiful fountain at the plaza's center had been destroyed by heavy bolter fire, its stone cherubs shattered into fragments. Gallius surveyed the carnage with satisfaction. "Secure the perimeter. Begin rounding up survivors for interrogation. And someone get me communications with their leadership. I want to know who controls this planet." But across Lothal, in a dozen cities and towns, the people had watched. They'd seen the dropships land. They'd heard the screams, and they'd received fragmented transmissions from Capital City before the comm towers were destroyed. Monsters had come to Lothal, armored giants who killed without mercy, who shrugged off blaster fire, who spoke of purging and cleansing. And the Empire, the hated Empire they'd been fighting for years, suddenly seemed like the lesser evil. In orbit, Lord Captain Corvin received Gallius's report with approval. 1 city secured with minimal casualties. Excellent. Begin Phase 2, systematic pacification of all population centers. Extract useful intelligence from prisoners. Then begin loading transports with human civilians for re-education camps. And the Xenos, my lord? Kill them. All of them. This world will be made pure. The orders went out. Across Lothal, Imperium forces began their methodical conquest. They were efficient, brutal, and utterly without mercy. And 12 light years away, aboard the rebel cruiser Home 1, Admiral Akbar listened to the distress calls from Lothal with growing horror. "They're not just attacking military targets," his communications officer reported, voice shaking. They're systematically executing all non-humans, entire neighborhoods, women, children. The transmissions say they're loading human civilians onto transports, but everyone else. "How many dead?" Mon Mothma asked, her face pale. "Estimates suggest 5,000 in the first hour. Projections indicate the number will reach 50,000 within 24 hours. Captain, they're conducting genocide." The word hung in the air like poison. "Send everything we can spare," Mon Mothma said. "Every ship, every soldier. We can't let this stand." "Against those things?" Dodonna protested. "We saw what they did to an Imperial patrol. Our forces would be slaughtered." "Then we die trying," Mon Mothma's voice cracked. "We founded this rebellion on principles, General. Freedom, justice, the belief that all sentient beings deserve to live free from tyranny. If we abandon Lothal because the enemy is too strong, what are we fighting for?" Silence answered her, because everyone in that room knew the truth. The rebellion could barely fight the Empire. Against the Imperium, they would be annihilated. But they also knew they had no choice. "Prepare the fleet," Akbar said quietly. "All available ships. We jump to Lothal in 2 hours." "We'll be flying into a massacre," Dodonna warned. "I know," Akbar replied. "But sometimes the choice isn't between victory and defeat. Sometimes it's between standing for what's right and becoming the very monsters we're fighting." The rebellion mobilized for war, knowing they would probably lose, knowing thousands would die, but fighting anyway, because that's what hope looked like at the end of all things. The Death Star emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the unknown regions, and every living being within sensor range felt the temperature drop. The battle station was 240 kilometers in diameter, a moon-sized weapon designed to destroy planets. Its surface bristled with turbo-laser batteries, shield generators, and the massive concave dish that housed the super laser. Grand Moff Tarkin stood in the command center, hands clasped behind his back, studying the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Imperium fleet hung in the distance, 17 ships that looked impressive, until you remembered the Death Star could vaporize them all with a single shot. Admiral Marty, status: all systems operational, Governor. Shields at maximum, super laser charged and ready. The Star Destroyers have taken up escort positions. We're ready for any hostile action. Excellent. Tarkin turned to Darth Vader, who stood in shadows at the chamber's edge. Lord Vader, your thoughts? Vader's breathing mask hissed rhythmically. He'd been silent since their arrival, his presence in the Force troubled and turbulent. The whispers had grown stronger as they approached, promising power, offering freedom, showing him visions of Padme alive and Palpatine dead. He'd resisted, barely. They are dangerous, Vader said finally, more than you realize. Their ships are crude but effective, their soldiers are fanatics, and there is something else. Something in the warp breach that calls to the dark side. Religious delusions, Tarkin dismissed. Their God Emperor is clearly a political figurehead, much like the Emperor before he dissolved the Senate. We approach from a position of overwhelming strength. They will submit or be destroyed. Your confidence may be misplaced. My confidence, Tarkin said coldly, is backed by the most powerful weapon ever constructed. This station has enough firepower to destroy their entire fleet in minutes. What can they possibly do against that? On the righteous fury, Lord Captain Corvin received the sensor data and felt his pulse quicken. The enemy had arrived, one massive spherical station, 12 warships, dozens of support craft. The station alone was larger than anything in the Imperium's arsenal, with energy output that suggested planet-killing capability. Is that? His second officer breathed. My lord, that's a battle moon, an artificial moon converted into a weapons platform. The Mechanicus would kill to examine that, Corvin admitted. Such technology, it's heretical and magnificent in equal measure. Orders, my lord? Corvin considered. The Imperium fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. That battle station could probably destroy every ship he commanded with contemptuous ease. Standard doctrine suggested retreat, regrouping, requesting reinforcements. But they had no reinforcements to request. And retreat meant abandoning the crusade, admitting weakness, failing the Emperor. Hail them, Corvin decided. Let's see if these humans are capable of reason before we commit to battle. The communication went out, translated by cogitators into the corrupted Gothic these humans spoke. Attention, enemy fleet. You command impressive technology. The Imperium acknowledges your strength. We offer terms. Submit to Imperial authority. Provide full access to your ship designs and manufacturing capabilities, and we will spare your civilians. Refuse, and we will be forced to demonstrate the Emperor's judgment. On the Death Star, Tarkin listened to the message and laughed. Actually laughed, a sound his officers had never heard before. They're offering us terms. They have 17 ships against the Death Star, and they're demanding we surrender. He shook his head. The arrogance is almost admirable. Governor, we're receiving a second transmission, the communications officer reported. Different source. It's from Lothal's system. The Rebel Alliance is engaging Imperium forces there. They're requesting Imperial assistance against the genocidal invaders. The bridge fell silent. The rebels were asking the Empire for help. Tarkin's expression shifted. Calculation replacing amusement. Interesting. The rebellion fears these Imperium fanatics more than they fear us. That tells me everything I need to know about the threat level. He turned to his tactical officer. Status of Lothal engagement? Fragmentary reports, sir. The Imperium is conducting systematic extermination of all non-human species on the planet. Confirmed casualties in the tens of thousands. The rebel fleet is en route but outmatched. Vader stirred. We should intervene. Why? Tarkin asked. Let the rebels and Imperium destroy each other. It saves us the trouble. Because the Imperium will not stop at Lothal. Vader's voice carried certainty. They see themselves as humanity's rightful rulers. Once they finish with the rebels, they will turn their attention to the Empire, and by then, they will have learned our weaknesses. Tarkin considered this. He disliked Vader's mystical pronouncements, but the Dark Lord's strategic instincts had proven sound in the past. Very well, we demonstrate Imperial power to both sides simultaneously. He turned to Admiral Motti. Prepare the super laser. Target the Imperium flagship, one shot to remove their command structure. Then we dictate terms to the survivors. On the Righteous Fury, Corvin watched as the Death Star's super laser dish began to glow with gathering power. His tactical officers shouted warnings, but he didn't need them. He'd seen super weapons before, lance batteries capable of cracking continents, cyclonic torpedoes that could scour worlds. But this was something else. All power to void shields, he roared. Brace for impact. The super laser fired. 8 tributary beams converged into a single emerald lance of destruction that crossed the distance in microseconds. It struck the Righteous Fury like the fist of an angry god. The void shields held for exactly 0.3 seconds before collapsing. The beam punched through 30 meters of adamantium armor, through 17 decks, through crew quarters and weapon batteries and sacred chapels. It carved through the ship's spine and exploded out the other side, leaving a hole 20 meters wide that glowed white-hot. Then the secondary explosions began. Plasma conduits ruptured, ammunition magazines detonated. The ship's plasma reactor, already stressed by the void shield collapse, began an uncontrolled cascade reaction. "Abandon ship!" Corvin screamed, but the words were lost in the shriek of tearing metal and dying men. All hands. Abandon! The Righteous Fury exploded. 6,000 years of service, thousands of battles survived, ending in a single brilliant flash that briefly outshone Lothal's sun. When the light faded, debris was all that remained. On the Hammer of Terra, Brother Captain Gallius watched the flagship die and felt something cold settle in his primary heart. The enemy had just demonstrated firepower beyond anything the Imperium possessed. One shot, one ship destroyed. "Captain," Brother Sergeant Tarkus said quietly, "we cannot defeat that weapon." "I know." Gallius's mind raced through tactical scenarios. The Codex Astartes covered countless battle situations, but facing planet-killing superweapon with no support wasn't among them. But we don't need to defeat it. We need to survive long enough to complete our mission. Which is? Lothal. We've already deployed ground forces. We extract them, secure as many prisoners as possible, and retreat to a safe distance. Then we assess and adapt. Retreat? Avetus's voice carried disbelief. The Ultramarines do not retreat. The Ultramarines do not waste their lives in futile gestures, Gallius corrected sharply. Courage is one thing, stupidity is another. We live to fight another day. The order went out across the remaining Imperium ships. Begin immediate withdrawal. Lothal ground forces to evacuate immediately. But on Lothal, that was easier ordered than accomplished. The rebel fleet had arrived, 6 corvettes, 3 frigates, and the modified star cruiser Home 1. They'd expected to face the Imperium alone. Instead, they found a 3-way battle erupting across the system. "What in all the hells is happening?" Admiral Akbar demanded, staring at the tactical display. "The Empire is firing on the Imperium, and the Death Star is here." "Confirmed, Admiral. The Death Star just destroyed the Imperium flagship with a single shot. The remaining Imperium vessels are attempting to withdraw. Ground forces on Lothal are fighting both rebel and local Imperial garrison units." "Then we have a window," Mon Mothma said, joining Akbar on the bridge. "The Imperium is retreating. The Empire is focused on them. We can evacuate civilian populations before the killing continues." "Or we could leave," Dodonna said bluntly. "Admiral, with respect, every instinct I have is screaming that we're about to fly into a meat grinder. The Death Star could destroy our entire fleet before we reach orbit. Then we'll have died for something that matters," Mon Mothma replied. "All ships, proceed to Lothal. Begin civilian evacuation operations. Prioritize non-human populations. They're being systematically targeted." The rebel fleet accelerated toward Lothal, knowing they were probably flying to their deaths. And on the Death Star, Tarkin watched all three factions converging and smiled. "Perfect. Let them entangle themselves. When the time is right, we'll demonstrate what happens when anyone, rebel or Imperium, challenges the Empire." He glanced at Vader. "Wouldn't you agree, Lord Vader?" But Vader didn't answer. He was staring at the warp breach, feeling it pulse with malevolent hunger. The whispers had grown to screams, 4 voices, distinct and terrible, promising power and demanding worship. And deep in the Death Star's maintenance corridors, something moved, something that wore shadows like skin and fed on fear, something that had been patiently waiting for this moment. The first possessed stormtrooper had no name anymore. He'd been TK-4477, a loyal soldier who'd served the Empire for 6 years. Now he was a vessel, a puppet, a doorway through which chaos could enter real space. His eyes glowed with unnatural light. His skin had taken on a waxy, pale quality. And when he spoke, 4 voices came from his throat. "Brothers," he whispered to the shadows, "the barriers are weak here, the battle station's reactor. Such power, such potential. We could feast for eternities." Around him, other possessed crew members emerged from the darkness, 7 in total, scattered across the Death Star, each one a seed of corruption. They had work to do, and above them, the 3-way battle for Lothal began in earnest. Luke Skywalker stood in the Home One's hangar bay, checking his X-Wing for the 3rd time. His hands shook, fear and adrenaline mixing with the Force's frantic warnings. Every instinct screamed that flying to Lothal was suicide. The Imperium had demonstrated their brutality. The Empire had brought the Death Star, and somewhere in the chaos, those whispers still clawed at his mind. But civilians were dying. Thousands of them. And the rebellion had principles, even if those principles would probably get them all killed. "Luke." Leia approached, her diplomatic robes replaced by practical combat gear. "You don't have to do this. You're too valuable to—" "Everyone keeps saying that," Luke interrupted gently. "But what good is being valuable if I don't use it to help people? You sound like Ben." "Good. He was usually right." Leia wanted to argue, wanted to order him to stay safe, wanted to be his sister instead of a princess and a general. But she'd learned that Luke Skywalker couldn't be protected from his own heroism. "Then come back alive," she said instead. "That's an order." Luke smiled. "Yes, ma'am." Across the hangar, pilots scrambled to their fighters. Red Squadron, Gold Squadron, every pilot the rebellion could spare. They'd be flying against 3 hostile forces, trying to evacuate civilians while avoiding planetary bombardment. The odds of success were approximately 3,720 to 1. R2-D2 beeped urgently from Luke's X-Wing's astromech socket, and Luke felt what the droid was warning about. The dark side, thick and choking, radiating from the Death Star like heat from a sun. And something else. Something worse. The whispers he'd felt near the warp breach, now echoing through the Force from the battle station itself. "I know, R2, Luke murmured. "Something's wrong there, more wrong than usual." The X-Wing launched, joining the formation of rebel fighters, screaming toward Lothal. Below them, the planet burned. Capital City was a war zone, space marines fighting rebel ground forces, Imperial stormtroopers engaging both sides, civilian populations caught in the crossfire. "All wings report in," Wedge Antilles commanded. Red Leader had died at Yavin. Wedge had inherited the position through survival and skill. Red 2, standing by. Red 3, standing by. Red 5, standing by. Luke's voice was steady despite his fear. The formations dove toward Lothal's atmosphere, and the killing began. TIE fighters swarmed from the Star Destroyers, green laser fire filling the void. The rebels scattered, years of training taking over, flying patterns that maximized survival against overwhelming numbers. Luke felt the Force guiding his hands, showing him where to fire, where to dodge. A TIE fighter exploded on his left. Another disintegrated under Wedge's precise shot. But for every TIE they destroyed, 3 more appeared. "We can't hold them," Red 4 screamed. "There's too many." His transmission cut off as a laser bolt found his cockpit. On Lothal's surface, Brother Captain Gallius coordinated his Space Marines' retreat with brutal efficiency. They'd secured 300 human prisoners for interrogation and eliminated approximately 15,000 Xenos. Not the complete purge he'd hoped for, but acceptable given the circumstances. "Thunderhawks inbound," Brother Sergeant Tarkus reported. "ETA 4 minutes. Defensive perimeter. Hold this position until extraction." Gallius fired his bolt pistol at a charging rebel soldier, the mass reactive round tearing the man in half. "The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects," his squad echoed. But even as they fought, Gallius felt it, that wrongness in the warp growing stronger. Something was happening on the enemy battle station, something catastrophic. His librarian had warned him. The warp breach was leaking corruption faster than anticipated, and in a concentrated population like that battle station. "Tiberius," Gallius voxed, "the enemy's superweapon. Are you sensing what I'm sensing?" "Yes, Captain." The librarian's voice was tight with strain. "Chaos corruption. Multiple possessed individuals. The warp is bleeding through their reactor's energy signature. If it's not contained..." He paused. "Captain, that station could become a warp rift, a permanent breach. If that happens, demons will pour through in numbers that will drown this entire sector. Can it be stopped? Only by destroying the station, or purging the corruption from within." Gallius made his decision in milliseconds. "Extraction is off. We're redeploying to the enemy battle station. Prepare boarding torpedoes." "Captain, that's suicide. They just destroyed our flagship with a single shot." "I know. But if that station becomes corrupted, everything, the Imperium, these humans, this entire galaxy, will fall to chaos. We are Space Marines. We stand between humanity and the darkness. Even if humanity doesn't deserve it. On the Death Star, the corruption spread. Possessed crew members moved through the corridors, converting others through whispered promises and violent domination. A tech officer, faced with a choice between death and demonic possession, chose survival and damned himself. A stormtrooper squad investigating strange readings in Sector 7 found themselves surrounded by shadows that moved independently and screamed with voices that broke sanity. 7 possessed became 23. 23 became 71. And in the reactor core, something stirred. The Death Star's hypermatter reactor generated enough power to destroy planets. That much energy, that much concentrated force, created ripples in the force itself, and those ripples attracted hungry attention. The Chaos Gods, patient and eternal, sensed opportunity. They couldn't manifest directly, not yet, not while the Force still acted as a barrier, but they could send lesser servants, demons, entities of pure malevolence that fed on fear and pain. The first demon materialized in a maintenance corridor on level 84. It was small, barely the size of a child, but its presence was wrong in ways that made reality itself recoil. Pink and blue skin, too many limbs, eyes that saw through dimensions. A maintenance worker saw it and screamed. The demon pounced and the screaming stopped. In the command center, Grand Moff Tarkin was still focused on the tactical situation, unaware his station was being corrupted from within. Status of Lothal engagement. Rebel forces are attempting evacuation operations. Imperial garrison forces are engaging rebel ground troops. The Imperium forces are, "Sir, they're launching boarding craft toward us." Toward the Death Star. Tarkin's expression shifted from confidence to calculation. Are they insane? Apparently so, sir. 4 torpedo craft, approximately 40 armored hostiles per craft. ETA 7 minutes. Activate point defense systems. Destroy them before they reach the hull. But even as the orders went out, Darth Vader felt the corruption spike. Tarkin, something is wrong, I sense. Not now, Lord Vader. We're under attack. No, you don't understand. There's something in the station. Something that shouldn't... An alarm shrieked. On the tactical display, red warnings blossomed across 17 sections. Casualties reported on level 84. Some kind of attack. Security teams not responding. Malfunctions in reactor control. Blast doors sealing randomly. Energy spikes across the super laser focusing array. Systems operating independently. Tarkin's face went pale. What is happening to my station? Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming. Chaos, he said simply. The corruption I warned you about. It's here. On Lothal's surface, Luke felt the disturbance spike through the Force like a knife. The Death Star, that monument to Imperial power and evil, was screaming. Not literally, but through the Force he could feel it. Terror, madness, something dark and hungry spreading through its corridors. Wedge, do you see that? Luke transmitted, staring at the battle station. The Death Star. Something's wrong with it. Yeah, I see it, Wedge replied. Energy fluctuations across the hull. Looks like they're having system failures. Maybe we can exploit... No, Luke said urgently. We need to get away from it. Everyone needs to get away from it. Whatever's happening there, it's going to get worse. And he was right. In reactor control, the possessed technicians had spent the last hour carefully sabotaging safety systems. Not obviously, that would trigger automatic shutdowns, but subtly, redirecting power flow, overriding limiters, pushing the hypermatter reactor beyond its designed parameters. The reactor didn't notice. It kept generating power, kept feeding the Death Star's systems, until the feedback loop began. More power meant more energy. More energy meant more heat. More heat meant more strain on containment. More strain meant more power needed for containment. The cycle accelerated, and in the spaces between dimensions, the Chaos Gods leaned closer, sensing the banquet about to be served. 4 Space Marine boarding torpedoes struck the Death Star's hull, their melter charges burning through armor like tissue paper. The Ultramarines poured out, bolters blazing, ready to face stormtroopers and Imperial security. Instead, they found hell. A possessed crew member stumbled toward them, his face split by a grin too wide, his eyes burning with colors that shouldn't exist. "Brothers," he gurgled, "the gods welcome you. Join us in ecstasy. Join us in..." Brother Avitus's heavy bolter spoke, and the possessed man exploded into ichor and meat. Chaos corruption, Brother Sergeant Tarkus confirmed grimly. The station is compromised. Then we purge it, Brother Captain Gallius said. He'd led campaigns against chaos cultists before. He knew what needed to be done. Find the reactor, shut it down. If we can't shut it down, we overload it. Better this station die clean than become a chaos stronghold. The Ultramarines advanced into the Death Star's corridors, and the battle for humanity's soul began. The Death Star had become a labyrinth of nightmares. Brother Captain Gallius led his squad through corridors that twisted in ways that violated geometry. The warp corruption had spread faster than he'd anticipated. Reality itself was breaking down, the barrier between dimensions growing thinner with each passing moment. Shadows moved independently of light sources. Walls bled colors that hurt to perceive, and the screaming, endless, echoing through Vox channels and minds alike. Reactor core 7 levels down, Librarian Tiberius reported, his psychic senses straining against the chaos presence. But, Captain, the corruption is concentrated there, dozens of possessed, maybe hundreds, and something worse. Something trying to claw through from the warp. Then we kill it before it arrives. Gallius reloaded his bolt pistol with practiced efficiency. Ultramarines, we are the Emperor's finest. We have faced chaos before and emerged victorious. Today will be no different. The Emperor protects, his squad roared. They advanced, and the possessed came to meet them. Former Imperial officers, stormtroopers, technicians, all transformed into puppets for malevolent entities. They moved with unnatural speed, their bodies twisted and enhanced by demonic gifts. One stormtrooper's armor had fused with his flesh, spikes erupting from the white plates. Another technician's arms had elongated into blade-tipped tentacles. The Ultramarines opened fire. Bolter rounds tore through corrupted flesh, mass reactive explosions painting the walls with ichor. But the possessed kept coming, driven by hunger and madness, feeling no pain, knowing no fear. Brother Avitus's heavy bolter roared, a sustained burst that turned 3, possessed into red mist. Brother Sergeant Tarkus wielded his chainsword, the whirring blade carving through corrupted bodies with brutal efficiency. And Gallius, at the center of his squad, felt the weight of command. Every second they delayed, more crew became possessed. Every moment wasted meant the warp rift grew stronger. Tiberius, can you seal the rift? The librarian's staff blazed with psychic fire, incinerating a possessed officer who'd gotten too close. Not while the reactor generates this much power. The energy output is creating a beacon, drawing the warp entities through. We need to shut it down. On the Death Star's bridge, Grand Moff Tarkin fought to maintain control of his disintegrating station. Half his crew was dead or possessed. Systems failed randomly as corrupted technicians sabotaged critical infrastructure, and the reports kept getting worse. Reactor approaching critical temperature, automatic shutdown protocols not responding. Sections 14 through 29 have gone silent. No communications, no life signs. Super laser firing sequence initiated. We didn't authorize that. Tarkin felt ice flood his veins. The super laser was charging on its own, corrupted crew or worse operating the controls. If it fired, override it. Shut down the power feed. We're trying, sir. The system isn't accepting commands. Darth Vader moved through the chaos with deadly purpose, his lightsaber carving through possessed crew with surgical precision. The dark side flowed through him, enhanced by the warp corruption, offering power beyond measure. And the whispers had returned. See how your Emperor fails you. See how his station crumbles. We offer strength eternal. We offer freedom from his chains. Join us, Vader. Become what you were always meant to be. Never, Vader growled, bisecting a possessed stormtrooper. "I serve the Empire. I serve Emperor Palpatine. You serve a corpse playing God. We are gods. Accept our gifts and you could challenge him. You could be free." The temptation burned like fire. To be free of Palpatine's control, to have power enough to reshape the galaxy, to perhaps, impossibly, bring Padme back. No, that path led only to damnation. Vader pushed the whispers aside and focused on survival. The station was dying. They needed to evacuate before the reactor went critical or the super laser fired into its own superstructure. "Tarkin, order full evacuation. The station is lost." "I will not abandon the Death Star," Tarkin roared. 20 years of construction, the Empire's greatest weapon. "Means nothing if we're dead." Vader grabbed Tarkin by the collar, lifting him off his feet. "Give the order, or I'll leave you here to die with your precious station." Above Lothal, Luke Skywalker felt the Force screaming warnings. The Death Star was about to explode. Not just a reactor failure, but something worse. Something that would tear a hole in reality itself. "All ships, full retreat," he transmitted. "Get as far from the Death Star as possible." "Luke, what are you sensing?" Wedge asked. "The end of everything if we don't run." "Now!" The rebel fleet broke off, engines screaming as they accelerated away from Lothal. The remaining Imperial Star Destroyers, receiving similar orders from officers who could feel the wrongness even without the Force, followed suit. And in the Death Star's reactor core, the Ultramarines reached their objective. The chamber was enormous, a cathedral of technology centered around a sphere of contained hypermatter that burned with the light of a captive star. Around it, possessed technicians worked with manic energy, redirecting power flow, pushing the reactor beyond all safety limits. And at the chamber's center, something was forming. It wasn't fully manifested yet, just a suggestion of shape, a distortion in space where reality grew thin. But Gallius could see what it would become, a greater demon, a prince of chaos. Powerful enough to corrupt entire worlds, sustained by the Death Star's power. "Kill them all," Gallius commanded. The Ultramarines charged. Bolter fire filled the reactor chamber, explosive rounds tearing through possessed technicians. Brother Avitus's heavy bolter stitched a line of devastation across the catwalk, bodies tumbling into the reactor's abyss. But the forming demon laughed, a sound that came from everywhere and nowhere that bypassed ears and struck directly at sanity. "Too late, little warriors. The breach is open. The power flows. Soon I shall walk in your reality, and this galaxy will burn." Librarian Tiberius stepped forward, his force staff blazing with psychic power. "Not while I live, abomination!" He unleashed his power, not the careful, controlled psychic abilities the Imperium permitted, but everything. Raw, unfiltered warp energy channeled through his enhanced mind, focused by decades of training and faith in the God Emperor. The psychic blast struck the forming demon like a hammer, and reality itself screamed. The demon recoiled, its manifestation disrupted, the warp energies sustaining it scattered. But Tiberius paid the price. Blood poured from his eyes, his nose, his ears. His body convulsed as the backlash tore through him. "Tiberius!" Gallius caught his librarian as he fell. Did I stop it?" Tiberius gasped. "You delayed it. Bought us minutes." Gallius looked at the reactor, calculating rapidly. "But the breach is still growing. We need to collapse the entire reactor, seal the rift permanently. That will destroy the station. And us." "I know." Gallius met his battle brother's eyes. "The Emperor protects Tiberius, but sometimes his protection requires sacrifice." Tiberius managed a bloody smile. "Courage and honor." "Courage and honor," Gallius agreed. He opened a Vox channel to his squad. Ultramarines, our mission is clear. We overload the reactor, collapse the warp rift, and ensure this corruption spreads no further. The Death Star will be destroyed, and we will die. But our sacrifice will save billions, perhaps trillions. We are Space Marines. We know no fear. We embrace death if it means humanity survives. Silence answered him for 3 heartbeats. Then, as one, his squad responded, "For the Emperor, for humanity, for the Imperium." They moved with purpose, placing melta charges on critical containment systems, severing power conduits, disabling safety protocols. The reactor, already strained beyond design limits, began an uncontrolled cascade reaction. Alarms shrieked. The containment sphere flickered, hypermatter energy bleeding through failing fields. 30 seconds to critical failure, Brother Sergeant Tarkus reported calmly. Gallius activated his Vox, broadcasting on all frequencies, Imperial, Rebel, even the corrupted Death Star channels. "This is Brother Captain Gallius of the Ultramarines 5th Company. To all forces in this system, the Death Star is lost. Evacuate immediately. The reactor will achieve critical mass in 20 seconds. There will be no survivors." On the Death Star's bridge, Tarkin finally understood. The station, his life's work, the Empire's greatest weapon, was about to become a tomb. "All personnel, evacuate," he commanded. "Abandon station. This is not a drill." Vader was already moving, force pulling Tarkin toward the hangar bay. Around them, stormtroopers and officers fled in panic, scrambling for escape pods and shuttles. But many wouldn't make it. The Death Star was too large, the time too short. In the reactor core, the Ultramarines stood in formation, bolters raised as reality collapsed around them. "It has been an honor, brothers," Gallius said. "The honor was ours, Captain," Tarkus replied. The reactor went critical. Hypermatter containment failed. In an instant, the energy of a star was released in an uncontrolled explosion. The Death Star didn't just explode, it was annihilated, every atom torn apart and scattered across light years. The blast was visible from 100 systems, a brief new sun that blazed and died. And in that moment of destruction, the warp rift collapsed. The demon, partially manifested, was torn back into the immaterium, screaming its rage. The corruption was purged in fire, the possessed crew incinerated before their suffering could continue. The Ultramarines died instantly, their armor and flesh vaporized. But in death, they had won. The galaxy was safe. For now. The shockwave from the Death Star's destruction rippled across Lothal's system like a physical blow. Ships tumbled through space, their shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. Luke's X-Wing spun wildly, and only R2-D2's frantic stabilization kept them from slamming into a Rebel cruiser. When the light faded and sensors cleared, the Death Star was gone. No debris field, no wreckage. Just empty space where the Empire's ultimate weapon had existed moments before. On the home one, Admiral Akbar stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. "It's gone. The Death Star is destroyed." "How?" Mon Mothma whispered. "What could destroy something that powerful?" "The Imperium," General Dodonna said, pulling up the last transmission. "That Space Marine captain, he sacrificed his entire squad to collapse the reactor. They saved us." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Imperium, the genocidal fanatics who'd been slaughtering civilians hours ago, had just destroyed the Empire's greatest weapon. Not to save the rebellion, not out of mercy, but to stop something worse. What were they fighting? Leia asked. What could be worse than the Death Star? Luke felt the answer through the Force, though he didn't fully understand it. Something from beyond, something that wanted to tear reality apart. They stopped it, at the cost of their lives. In orbit around Lothal, the remaining Imperium fleet regrouped. Lord Captain Corvin was dead, the righteous fury destroyed. Fleet command had fallen to Captain Valen of the Emperor's Will, a stern woman who'd served the Imperium for 30 years. She listened to Brother Captain Gallius's final transmission 3 times, feeling something she hadn't expected. Grief, not for the Death Star's destruction. That was a strategic victory. But for the Ultramarines who'd given their lives to prevent chaos corruption from spreading. He died well, she said quietly. They all did. The Emperor will welcome them. Captain, what are our orders? Her second officer asked. The enemy superweapon is destroyed. We've secured intelligence from Lothal. Should we press our advantage? Valen considered. The Death Star's destruction had thrown both the Empire and rebels into chaos. The Imperium could strike now, could claim systems while their enemies reeled. But she'd seen what chaos could do when given the slightest opening. She'd watched a battle station, the most powerful weapon in this galaxy, nearly become a demonic stronghold. These humans didn't understand the threat. They didn't know about the warp, about demons, about the eternal war against chaos. And without that knowledge, they were vulnerable. We withdraw, she decided. Back to the breach. We need to assess the situation, request reinforcements from across the rift, and develop a strategy for this galaxy. We came here seeking compliance. Instead, we found a new front in humanity's eternal war. And the Xenos on Lothal, Captain. The purge is incomplete. Valen's jaw tightened. Standard doctrine was clear. Xenos were to be exterminated. But they'd already lost thousands of soldiers, their flagship, and an entire Space Marine squad. Continuing the purge would commit resources they couldn't spare. Mark Lothal for future cleansing operations. For now, survival takes priority over purity. The Imperium fleet began its withdrawal, their Gothic warships turning toward the warp breach. But as they left, they broadcast one final message across all frequencies. People of this galaxy, the Imperium of Man has witnessed your strength and your weakness. We have seen your technology and your faith. We have stopped a corruption that would have consumed you all. Remember this, the Imperium came as conquerors. We leave as witnesses. We will return, and when we do, you will have a choice. Stand with humanity against the darkness, or be swept aside. The Emperor protects, but only those who accept his light. The transmission ended. On the Executor, Darth Vader stood alone in the wreckage of what had been the Death Star's escort fleet. 12 Star Destroyers reduced to 8, thousands of crew dead. And Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin had made it to an escape pod. Barely. His pride had nearly killed him, his refusal to abandon his station almost ensuring his death. Vader had saved him through the Force, pulling him to safety even as the reactor exploded. But the Death Star was gone. The Emperor's ultimate weapon, destroyed not by rebel sabotage or military assault, but by religious fanatics sacrificing themselves to stop a threat Vader still didn't fully understand. He'd felt it, though. The chaos corruption, the whispers that had offered him everything he'd ever wanted. Freedom from Palpatine, power beyond measure, even the impossible dream of resurrection. Lies, all lies. He'd known it instinctively, felt the wrongness beneath the seductive promises. But others would fall for those lies, others would be tempted. And if the warp breach remained open, if more of these demons could manifest... Lord Vader, Captain Piet's voice interrupted his thoughts. The Emperor is demanding your report. He wants to know what happened. Vader considered what to tell Palpatine. The truth, that the Death Star had been destroyed not by enemy action, but by internal corruption from extra-dimensional entities. That religious fanatics had saved the Empire by sacrificing themselves. that the greatest threat to galactic stability wasn't the rebellion, but something far older and more malevolent. "Tell the Emperor," Vader said slowly, "that the Imperium of Man is dangerous, not because of their technology or numbers, but because they understand threats we don't. They stopped something today that could have consumed the entire galaxy, and if we're wise, we'll learn from them before it's too late." On Yavin 4, the rebellion celebrated victory even as they mourned their losses. 17 pilots had died, 3 ships destroyed, but they'd saved thousands of civilians from Lothal, evacuating them before the Imperium or Empire could complete their respective purges, and the Death Star was gone. "We didn't destroy it," Leia said to Luke, both of them watching the celebration from the temple's upper levels. "The Imperium did. They sacrificed themselves, and we get credit for the galaxy's greatest weapon being destroyed." "Does it matter who gets credit?" Luke asked. "The Death Star is gone. That's what matters." "It matters because we still have to fight the Imperium. They withdrew today, but they'll be back, and when they return, they'll remember that we opposed them." Luke thought about Brother Captain Gallius's final transmission, the cold certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction that he was doing the right thing, even as he died. "They're not evil," Luke said quietly. "The Imperium, they're fanatics, yes. Brutal, definitely. But they believe they're protecting humanity. They see the galaxy as a threat that needs to be controlled, converted, made safe. That doesn't make them right. No, but it doesn't make them entirely wrong either." Luke turned to face his sister. "Leia, what was trying to manifest on the Death Star? I felt it through the Force. It was hatred given form, corruption and madness made real. If the Imperium hadn't stopped it, if those Space Marines hadn't sacrificed themselves..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Leia closed her eyes. "So we're fighting 3 wars now, against the Empire, against the Imperium, and against something we don't even understand." "Welcome to the galaxy far, far away," Han Solo said, joining them with Chewbacca, "where things just keep getting worse." "Encouraging as always, Captain Solo," Leia said dryly. "Hey, I'm a realist. Speaking of which," Han gestured at the celebration below, "everyone's acting like we won, but the Empire still controls most of the galaxy. The Imperium is still out there, probably building more ships. And whatever that warp breach thing is, it's still open." "So what do we do?" Luke asked. Han shrugged. "Same thing we've always done. We survive. We fight. We hope that tomorrow gives us better odds than today." It wasn't inspiring. It wasn't heroic. But it was honest. And in a galaxy that had just gotten infinitely more complicated, honesty was all they had. The warp breach remained open, a wound in reality that pulsed with unnatural light. The Imperium fleet established a perimeter around it, their Gothic warships standing vigil against both external threats and the corruption that leaked from beyond. They had come seeking compliance. They had found war, sacrifice, and a galaxy far stranger than their crusade had anticipated. In the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine meditated on the Force's new disturbance. The Death Star's destruction was a setback, yes, but also an opportunity. These Imperium fanatics understood threats he was only beginning to perceive, entities from beyond reality, corruption that could turn even the strongest minds. If he could harness that knowledge, bend it to his will. The dark side whispered promises, and Palpatine smiled. On Yavin 4, the rebellion counted their dead and planned for the future. They had gained breathing room. The Empire and Imperium would be too focused on each other to crush the alliance immediately. But that respite would be temporary. Eventually, one side would emerge victorious, and then the rebellion would face an enemy stronger than before, unless they could find allies. unless they could learn from both sides, adapt, survive. Hope was a fragile thing, but it was all they had. And across the galaxy, in scattered Imperial outposts and rebel cells, in cantinas and starship bridges and forgotten planets, people told stories of what had happened at Lothal. Stories of armored giants who killed without mercy but died with honor. Stories of a battle station destroyed by sacrifice rather than sabotage. Stories of something dark and hungry that had nearly consumed them all. The galaxy had changed. The arrival of the Imperium, the opening of the warp breach, the destruction of the Death Star. These were not isolated incidents. They were the beginning of something larger, a convergence of realities, a collision of philosophies, a war that would determine not just who ruled the galaxy, but what kind of galaxy would remain when the fighting ended. Luke Skywalker stood beneath Yavin's red giant, feeling the Force flow through him in new and troubling ways. The warp corruption had touched it, changed it subtly. The barrier between dimensions was thinner now, more permeable, and through the cracks he could feel ancient intelligences stirring, patient and hungry. The Jedi had always taught balance, light and dark, held in equilibrium. But what happened when something outside that balance entered the equation? What happened when the Force itself was threatened by entities it was never designed to resist? He didn't have answers, but he knew with absolute certainty that he would need them soon. The Imperium would return with reinforcements. The Empire would rebuild its strength. The Chaos Gods would continue testing the barriers, seeking entry into a galaxy rich with souls to corrupt and devour. And somewhere in the unknown regions, ancient threats were awakening to the scent of dimensional blood. The galaxy far, far away had become a battleground for forces beyond comprehension. 3 factions, Empire, Rebellion, and Imperium, would struggle for dominance. And beneath that surface conflict, a deeper war raged, the eternal battle between order and chaos, hope and despair, faith and doubt. Brother Captain Gallius had died believing he saved humanity. Perhaps he had, or perhaps he'd simply delayed the inevitable, bought a galaxy a few more months or years before the darkness consumed everything. Time would tell. But in a galaxy where hope survived against impossible odds, where farm boys could become heroes and smugglers could become generals, where even the most brutal fanatics could sacrifice everything for a cause they believed righteous, maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. The Force would be with them. It had to be, because the alternative was unthinkable. May the Force be with you. More stories await.